He who cannot put his thoughts on ice should not enter into the heat of dispute. There's a peculiar kind of power that doesn't announce itself. It doesn't roar. It doesn't interrupt. It waits. Imagine a crowded room. Heated arguments, sharp opinions, raised voices competing for air. And there, almost unnoticed, is the quiet one. They watch, they listen. Their presence cuts sharper than any voice, and when they finally do speak, even just a sentence, the entire room holds its breath. What gives this person such influence? What ancient wisdom echoes through their restraint? This is the paradox Nietzsche saw so clearly over a century ago, one that modern psychology now confirms. Silence, when conscious and deliberate, is not a void. It is a weapon, a mirror, a throne. Today, we'll uncover why truly intelligent people stay quiet, and what Nietzsche taught us about the hidden language of silence. Chapter 1. The Psychology of Still Waters. Most people misunderstand silence. They assume it's absence, emptiness, a lack of confidence. But for the intelligent observer, silence is density. It holds weight. It absorbs the energy of a room and reflects it back with quiet precision. Nietzsche wasn't merely a philosopher of fire and fury. He was a master of psychological tension. In his writings, silence emerges as a mode of resistance against the chaos of noise, a refusal to be pulled into the unconscious flow of reactive speech. Talking much about oneself can also be a means to conceal oneself. Think of that. Words not as revelations, but as masks. Modern neuroscience now supports this insight. The act of remaining silent in social contexts triggers heightened neurological activity in the people around you, especially in regions of the brain associated with social threat and uncertainty. Why? Because when someone is silent, they become unreadable, and the human mind is wired to fear the unknown. This fear isn't loud, it's subtle, but it manifests quickly. People begin oversharing, over-explaining, over-justifying, trying to fill the uncomfortable vacuum created by a single, composed person saying nothing. And in that vacuum, the silent observer gathers power. Chapter 2. The Strategic Observer. The intelligent person doesn't stay silent because they have nothing to say. They stay silent because they've mastered the art of timing. Friedrich Nietzsche admired the figure who could remain unmoved amid chaos, the one who could pause, reflect, and only speak when it mattered. This wasn't weakness, it was strength under control. He called this ideal the Übermensch, the one who overcomes themselves, who doesn't react like the herd, but who waits, watches, and then strikes with intention. He who has a why to live can bear almost any how. This clarity of purpose informs every word the intelligent observer speaks. They do not speak to impress, they speak to express something true. In modern research, especially in negotiation psychology, we find the same principle. Skilled negotiators are often silent for up to 60% of the conversation. Why? Because silence makes others uncomfortable. They begin to speak more, often revealing far more than they intend. The intelligent person knows that silence is not passive, it's active withholding, not withdrawing, but positioning. Like a chess master, they don't rush the board. They wait for the moment when a single move changes everything. Chapter 3. The Fear of Silence. There's a reason most people talk so much. It's not because they're confident, it's because they're afraid. Afraid of what silence reveals. Afraid of what silence might mean to others. In a world where noise equals presence, silence feels like disappearance. But Nietzsche would tell you the opposite is true. To him, silence was the crucible of thought. Invisible threads are the strongest ties. And nothing creates more invisible tension than silence in a crowded room. When someone refuses to speak, everyone else begins projecting. Are they judging me? Do they disagree? Are they more knowledgeable? This projection is power. Psychological studies show that humans fear uncertainty more than almost anything else, and silence breeds uncertainty. It removes the comforting cues of agreement or disagreement, and it forces the group to guess. That guesswork can make the quietest person the most psychologically dominant in the room. But this kind of silence must not be confused with insecurity. The body language is different. The intention is different. The intelligent person isn't silent to hide, they're silent to see. Chapter 4. The Power of Listening. Silence, when rooted in awareness, becomes an instrument of listening. But not the passive kind. This is active, focused, almost surgical listening. The kind of listening that penetrates through words, that senses hesitation in tone, that recognizes motives before they're revealed. Nietzsche, though often misunderstood as a lone prophet, was deeply attuned to the undercurrents of human interaction. He wrote, "He who cannot put his thoughts on ice should not enter into the heat of dispute." This is not just a warning against impulse. It's a pointer to the art of deliberation, of waiting, absorbing, preparing. Modern neuroscience backs this up. Studies show that when you truly listen, silently and without interruption, your brain enters a heightened state of empathy and pattern recognition. It's in these moments that the mind begins to truly understand. This is what separates the reactive from the strategic. The person who must always be speaking is often thinking out loud. But the intelligent person has already thought it through before a single word escapes. In a world obsessed with speaking, those who master the art of listening gain an unfair advantage, because they are the only ones collecting the full story. Chapter 5. Nietzsche's Übermensch and the Warrior of Restraint. To understand the silent strength of the intelligent, we must meet Nietzsche's most powerful concept, the Übermensch. Not a brute, not a tyrant, not someone who dominates through chaos, but one who dominates themselves. A human being so sovereign, so self-directed, that silence becomes a choice, not a limitation. The Übermensch is not enslaved by the chatter of others. He does not speak to be heard. He speaks to reveal clarity when the moment is ripe. He does not react, he decides. In Thus Spoke Zarathustra, Nietzsche writes, "A man's maturity, that is to have rediscovered the seriousness one had as a child at play." This is the essence of the warrior of restraint, serious, playful, deliberate. The silent individual is not passive. He is a warrior of attention. He withholds his reactions, not because he lacks a voice, but because he values it. And like a sharpened blade, it is unsheathed only when necessary. The modern world confuses noise for depth, but the Übermensch, he who walks above the herd, understands that true power is quiet, invisible, and timed. In this way, Nietzsche's silent figure is not a hermit. He is the master of himself, and in mastering himself, he gains influence over everything else. Chapter 6. Strategic Silence in a World. Addicted to noise. Silence, in our time, is heresy. We live in an empire of expression, a kingdom of noise. Every platform begs us to speak, react, argue, to say something, anything. But amidst this digital cacophony, the intelligent few remain composed. Strategic silence is not withdrawal. It's war by other means. It's the art of saying more by saying less. The pause that makes the music, the stillness that builds gravity. In high-stakes negotiations, the most skilled participants know he who breaks the silence first loses. Why? Because silence forces others to reveal their insecurities. It exposes the neediness in their arguments, the compulsion to justify, to defend, to be liked. But those who master silence know how to hold discomfort. They don't rush to fill the void. They become the void. And in doing so, they control the rhythm of the entire room. Nietzsche, in his subtle genius, foreshadowed this when he said, "He who cannot obey himself will be commanded." Silence is self-command, and those who command themselves command the game. Chapter 7. The Echo of Wisdom, when the quiet speak. There comes a moment. A room full of talkers pauses. The silent one clears their throat. And the atmosphere shifts. Why? Because they don't speak often, so when they do, it means something. Their words carry weight. Their restraint becomes mystique. This is not accidental. It's the architecture of attention. Consider the Stoics, the monks, the sages. None of them were loud. They built their influence through silence, discipline, and timing. In silence, they observed the flaws of men. In silence, they forged insight. This is the paradox. The less you need to speak, the more people listen when you finally do. In many ways, this is Nietzsche's final lesson. To transcend noise is to transcend the crowd. You don't have to argue to win. You don't have to speak to lead. That sometimes presence alone is power. Sometimes the silence between words speaks the most ancient truth. The hidden flame behind the silence. So now, the question returns to you. Will you keep filling the silence? Will you try to be heard by volume or by value? Will you dominate the conversation or master the pause? There is a quiet flame burning behind the lips of the intelligent. It is focus, restraint, vision. Nietzsche called this the will to power, but not over others, over oneself. In a world that never stops speaking, perhaps the most radical act of intelligence is to say nothing until it truly matters. Silence, then, true silence, is not empty. It is full of force. And the next time you enter a room, you won't have to raise your voice. You'll carry something deeper, an unseen strength, a presence, a power that moves without motion. The silent observer does not shout. He waits. He sees. And when the time is right, he speaks with the weight of 1,000 unspoken truths. So remember, you are not quiet because you lack power. You are quiet because you are becoming it. And when you finally speak, the world will listen.